Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's week 10. Cashing Point stream is up for free. It's free this week on the YouTube page. Pretty exciting stuff. We have, as always, our guys here, Scott and Johnny, to go through this week 10 slate. And guys, this is a fun one. There's a lot of injury news and notes. Quite a few cheap running backs to get to, and yeah, man, it's a fun slate. Scott, you there? I think you're on mute. You're on mute there, homie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's like super quiet though.
Okay.
What's going on, Proctor? I see you got the Natty Light hat on. That's always your good luck. Your good luck.
Always, man. Always. Need it. Oh man, I've been rehabbing. We've been moving into a house, rehabbing our previous house. It has been quite a few weeks, but I'm ready. The T levels are at their peak, and we're gonna win this slate. And we're gonna pick a backup running back of the week.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what this comes down to is getting those backup backs right this week. Let's see here before we get rolling. Oh, Scott died, so he's going to get back out. We'll go ahead and get started here before we'll take it slow in this first game. See if Scott can get back in. Let me pull this up. All right, let's get started here. Oh, there he is. You're alive, Scott. You got us.
Oh, that's Scott. He's always the king of technology.
We run a very tight ship over here, as you can tell.
To be fair, he's upgraded from podcasting from a flipped upside down trash can as a table. We've come a long way.
Those are the glory days. He's back out again. All right, let's just get started here. We'll see if Scott can get back in here. Bucks, Washington, first game we're going to talk about. Man, the team, they definitely know how to get their guys back and handle these injuries. Logan Thomas still not practicing. Curtis Samuel still not practicing. Diami Brown, Cam Sims are both banged up still. For the Bucs side, obviously we know AB and Gronk are out. Chris Godwin popped up on like Wednesday or Thursday with this foot issue. He did practice today. Arians said he's like keeping his fingers crossed, and I love Bruce Arians, but I never really want to believe Arians when he comes out and says stuff like this. But I do think there's a better chance now that Godwin plays than it was looking like on Thursday night. The other note I have is Scotty Miller could be back for this game. So with no AB and Godwin back, I think we'll see a 3-wide set of obviously Edwins, Godwin, and Tyler Johnson. Man, I mean, it kind of sucks. I wish we had AB and Gronk in this game because, Washington has been just so atrocious through the air. But, Evans is just a phenomenal play, even if Godwin doesn't go. He's been fantastic recently in the games he hasn't played against Darius Slay or Lattimore. He's been a beast, and obviously if we get Godwin, it'll be nice too. So let's get started on this Bucs side here, man. Johnny, what are your thoughts on Evans and Godwin and how you're playing these Tampa guys this week?
Yeah, I think Godwin plays, but I do think there's a chance that we could see him like somewhat limited. Especially if they smash the football team. So I think on the Bucs side, to get a lot out of Brady and these guys, I think we really need football team players to show up, and they haven't really showed up in weeks. So it's a tough one to figure out, but I do think that people will play a lot of Mike Evans, and that'll probably be about it. So I think playing the other Bucs is probably reasonable in tournaments. And I also want to note that Scott and I must have the same couch, and this is literally the cheapest couch futon buy in the country.
Yeah.
And you just screw on 4 feet, and it is horribly uncomfortable. And that says a lot about you, Scott.
It was $85 at Walmart, and my friend surprised me on my birthday flying out to Houston, and I was like, well, you can either sleep on the floor because you're not sleeping with me, and he was like, come on, let's just go buy a couch for this weekend, and it was $80. I'm like, all right, sick deal. So I'm like the prototypical cliche single guy in his early 30s who like refuses to buy any furniture. Like I'm content with no TV, no dressers, no bookshelf, just throw it all on the floor. But now I have this lovely futon.
Oh, now you just got to go to IKEA and create the trifecta. Get like a little.
I don't want to get IKEA's labyrinthian. It's like my own personal hell where I just want to buy, you know, a $20 bookshelf, and I'm going to be in there for 8 hours. I'd be starving. Then I'll have to buy the meatballs for $2.
Dude, I'm pretty sure like you
Run
can't
into a Minotaur.
You can't not go to IKEA and not get lost in there. It's unbelievable.
I hate it.
Yeah.
Let's talk this game because, by the way, sorry for the technical difficulties. We're trying out a new streaming thing because we're free on YouTube this week. But I love this game. I love stacking this game, and I love all the pieces. Mike Evans, obviously, uber chalk, and rightfully so. He's been an absolute monster this year. Over his last 7 games, he's averaging 19.4 fantasy points per game. And then if you exclude the 2 bottom 3 matchups against Darius Slay and Marshawn Lattimore's shadow coverage, he's averaging 23.7. So he's basically like the Cooper Kupp on this slate. Factor in all the injuries. It's an absolute dream smash matchup. Godwin's in a great spot if he plays. I love Brady stacks. I love Heine stacks. And, you know, Fournette's also in play. So the Buccaneers are favored by 9.5. The second highest implied point total of the slate. This is 2 pass funnel matchups going up against each other. Tampa Bay is already the most pass-heavy team over expectation by a landslide, over twice as much the next closest defense. And then Washington's the top pass funnel defense. And the number 2 defense is Tampa Bay. So really shaping up by the numbers to be a pass-heavy affair. So I love Brady. And then, you know, if Godwin plays, you could stack Heine with McLaurin and both wide receivers. But Fournette, like I said, it's a massive pass funnel, but you still have to really look long and hard at Fournette. He averages 21.4 fantasy points per game over Tampa Bay's last 4 victories. Among all slate-eligible running backs, that would rank best. He's the RB15 on DK, RB12 on FanDuel. And so it's a tricky situation in the sense that, well, does Tom Brady continue to shoot for breaking every record in the book and winning MVP at 44 years old? Or do you just lean with the matchup, the pass-heavy matchup, or do you lean more towards the game script? I don't know. And then Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson would actually both be in play if Godwin sits. If Godwin does not sit, Scotty Miller would be the better play. He ran twice as many routes as Tyler Johnson in week 3 when Antonio Brown was out. And we didn't mention McLaurin and J.D. McKissick, who and maybe the tight end there, depending on who that is. I don't know. Someone respond to something I've said.
I'm responding to something you said.
Is it about the couch?
Yeah, definitely. Now Logan Thomas is out, man. So we're gonna get RSJ.
All right.
Tom made a funny point in Slack. He's like, you know, anytime Washington has one of their key guys get injured, you just add like 3 weeks to when you're gonna get back. I mean, it's the truth though. I mean, this team, man, is just, man.
Yeah, it sounds like now Ryan Fitzpatrick might just like never come back. I don't know.
Well, he has the same injury as James White, so basically the same exact injury.
Yeah, but he got his on a water slide before the season started, remember?
I don't get that reference.
It's the fan rumor, man. All these Washington football team fans are like angry. They think he got hurt at a water park.
Well, water parks are the stone worst anyway. You should never ever go there anyway. So
Hard disagree. Texas has Schlitterbahn.
Oh God, no, thank you. Yeah, man. There's just a lot. This game is nice because it's super condensed, like you were kind of getting at, Scott. It's we know where the ball is going to go with Brady's receivers. We know Fournette's been the nuts, and the bring backs on Washington side are pretty clear with McLaurin. And I think really the call is, do we want anything to do with McKissick and RSJ here?
Well, I think Antonio Gibson's dust.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe he's healthier off the bye, but everything I've read from the top injury experts in the industry is that this is an injury that's only going to get worse and not better. He's going to play through it throughout the remainder of the season. And then we saw Jarrett Patterson out-snap and out-touch him his last game. And then everything else, shapes up for a McKissick game anyway. Tampa Bay is best on the ground against running backs, but bottom 5 against running backs through the air. It's the script is in his favor. He's averaging 8 targets per game over his last 3, and we saw that last season with Gibson hurt and inactive, where he was basically seeing wide receiver 1 levels of target volume, not target quality, but target volume.
Right.
It's just thin in the sense that there's a million excellent running back plays this week. But I think the bulk of my exposure this week is going to be Brady Heine lineups, and then on non-Brady Heine lineups, Fournette.
Yeah, it's tough because McKissick's 52 on DK, and then obviously we have Ingram and Dearness Johnson, which we'll get to. But yeah, like you mentioned,
and then look at the top. There's 5 running backs who could break the slate easily.
There's 15 running backs in play this week, which is wild.
Last week there was 4.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I think just to note, I think Fournette and Mike Evans are very, negatively correlated in that Mike Evans is sort of the goal line wide receiver back, Fournette goal line running back, obviously. So I think Fournette is a good leverage play off of Mike Evans. If Godwin is out, Mike Evans is going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. So That's just something to consider. Yeah,
especially on FanDuel, Mike Evans is only 74, I believe. Yeah, 7,400. He's going to be mega chalk over there. All right, we covered this game enough. Lions Steelers. Steelers are 9-point favorites. Over under is 42.5. Kind of bad news for the Lions, though. Jamal Williams hasn't practiced all week out of their bye. He's got a quad issue. I would be shocked if he plays. So we're going to get DeAndre Swift in a phenomenal role. Swift was obviously mega chalk 2 weeks ago before their bye, and that game just died. The Lions did nothing, and Swift did nothing. I think we're going to see Swift at probably a little bit lower ownership than he should be, especially with all the good running back plays on the slate. Steelers side, Chase Claypool has turf toe. He's going to end up missing probably 2 to 3 weeks. Eric Ebron's back. But the big news here in this game is Najee Harris popped up on the injury report on Thursday. He's got some sort of foot issue. I looked into this. Mike Tomlin basically said Anthony McFarland was a healthy scratch last week. So if Harris were to miss, we're probably going to get some sort of gross timeshare.
Harris is good to go.
Yes? All right, cool.
Just came out.
Sweet. Well, that makes this a lot easier here. Well, good. Now we won't have to spend time talking about Kalen Balazs and Benny Snell. Let's just talk Steelers because the Lions are super simple this week with Swift and Hawk. So is Harris off the injury report, Johnny? Is that what the tweet said?
It just said,
there you go.
Yeah. So the only person who did not practice today was Chase Claypool. Everyone else practiced, which means that they are good to go. So
yeah, I was a little concerned because Harris wasn't at his normal Friday presser, which is usually never good. But
so he's also lost 10 to 15 snaps a week to Benny Snell the last couple of weeks. So I don't know if this is maybe something that's just been nagging and they don't want to give him 100% snaps, but obviously something to think about because he's gonna be really popular.
Yeah. Yeah, I was, that game last week, obviously they were in control of, and Balazs ended up getting a handful of snaps. Balazs actually out-snapped Snell last week, but Harris has still been above 80% snap share in basically every game this year. And obviously this is just such an amazing spot. But I'm with you that I think it dings Harris a little bit, especially in the context of the slate with so many good running back plays.
Scott, is Najee still bell cow status, even though he's lost a little bit of work the last few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Who can you project at over even 70% of the snaps this week on the slate?
Christian McCaffrey, but we'll get there.
Oh, that's music to my ears, Johnny. But yeah, outside of McCaffrey, there's no one. It was Alvin Kamara as the only other back over 75% of the snaps. Henderson was on that bubble. Kamara's probably out. Henderson not on the main slate. So he's still the de facto bell cow, even if you factor in, minus 10 snaps or what have you. But man, I love him. And, Johnny and I were all over this in the preseason and Graham actually, but as like peak Le'Veon Bell usage, that's exactly what he's seeing. He's on pace for over 300 carries, 100 targets, one of only 5 running backs ever. He's been an RB1 in 7 of his last 7 games, averages 22 fantasy points per game. That's second most. He had a 6-game stretch with at least 22, but that ended last week. By XFP, he's finished top 5 in 5 of his last 6 games, far and away above any other running back, averaging 24.5. I mean, carries are there, targets are there, game script immune, and the matchup's unbelievable. Detroit ranks second worst in schedule adjusted fantasy points per game, third worst in rushing fantasy points per game, worst in fantasy points per target allowed to opposing running backs. So absolute smash spot, and love him, just love him.
So here's my thing with this week. I think there are 3 of the most popular players at running back, wide receiver, and tight end are all going to be Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers aren't good. So that's something that I'm trying to figure out. And I think you mentioned Swift. One of the 2 of you did. I think Swift and paired with the Lions defense is like one of the most contrarian running back defense stacks on the week that I think is kind of interesting, because we're going to see a combined 80% ownership between Najee, Freiermuth, and Deontay. And if the Steelers just shit the bed, which is fully in range.
Wait, is Eric Ebron back?
Yes.
Yeah, but Freiermuth is still way too cheap on all the sites because of the Monday night game.
I don't know. I'm a Dan Arnold guy.
I'm just concerned, man, that the Steelers are going to come out and play Ebron, 40% of the routes and bring Freiermuth back down to 55, 60%. That's my main concern. But, with no Claypool, I guess they could go more 12 and move Ebron into the slot a little bit more and play Freiermuth in line, but still.
So Johnny, that's one way to play it. That's certainly one way to play it. Another way to play it is Big Ben stacks, which no one's going to want to play.
Yeah, because I'm just not going to do it, man.
Yeah, that's fine. He's dust, but I mean, Detroit also ranks dead last in fantasy points allowed per pass attempt. He should be able to do whatever he wants, even if he is fully cooked.
I mean, he has no ceiling, though.
I don't know about that. It's just dream smash matchup. The volume is going to be there. We know it. This is the most concentrated offense in football by a landslide, by XFP market share. They're at Deontay plus Harris is at 56%. I don't think anyone else is over 50. It's just no Claypool. Deontay, by the way, mispriced every single week on DraftKings. I love him. I think he has a legitimate ceiling. Prior to last week, had double-digit targets in 16 of his last 17 games with Big Ben under center. That's just obscene. The matchup, Detroit's not seeing a ton of pass volume, but by efficiency, second worst in fantasy points per target to outside wide receivers. And is this not a guy we're projecting to get 20 targets this week? They also rank third worst in fantasy points per game allowed to opposing wide receiver ones. Mispriced, no Claypool. I love it.
Yeah, I love Deontay, but I mean, Big Ben hasn't topped 16 fantasy points in a game this year. I mean, and like you mentioned, the Lions have just been getting shit on all year, and there's been no volume to go around.
He hasn't topped 16. That's really bad.
Yeah, dude, he has no ceiling.
I liked it as a contrarian play just because I didn't think anyone would go that route, though there would be heavy Deontay Harris exposure. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem is that his pieces are too high owned for Ben to really be all that valuable.
Yeah, you're right.
I just think the total in this game is 43, and I mean the Steelers are like when you think of a team that just like plays down at times, it's them. I don't know. I don't love that there's going to be 3 popular Steelers in a 43 total when there's so many other good options. So I think for me, I'm definitely going to limit at most 1 Steeler per team when I do my builds.
But I think one thing you're getting wrong with the total is, okay, the total is not massive, but it's also 27% more than their per game average this year. They average 20.1 points per game. I'm seeing the total at 25.5. So, factor in the 55% XFP market share, bump it up to 60% without Claypool, it should be even higher than that. And then give a 27% boost to the scoring potential. And that's massive.
Right. But I'm saying if the Steelers are going to score 2 touchdowns, 2.5, I mean, you're not winning the millie with Najee and Deontay.
I mean, you might be able to. Najee Harris had 18 targets in 19 targets in week 3.
I mean, not at their ownership.
I mean, the flip side to all of this conversation is, Detroit's offense has been garbage. I mean, they have 8 touchdowns in their last 6 games. I mean, are we really expecting them to stay competitive in this game and keep Big Ben's foot on the gas? And to Johnny's point earlier, I mean, if Najee Harris is slightly banged up and they're up 2-3 scores in the second half, I mean, they're definitely going to rotate, Balaj and Snell in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and the only way that the Lions stay competitive is if Big Ben does something bad, which is why I think that's why I kind of like the Swift Lions defense pairing. And then if that happens, then you're looking at 15, 16 targets for Deontay. I mean, that's within range. Because I think Najee will probably be one of the top 3 highest owned running backs on the slate. I think he'll be the most popular sort of linchpin on DraftKings. It'll be either him or Taylor that people are going to start with as their expensive back.
Yeah. I think with the Harris injury news, I think Taylor will probably end up being more popular, don't you think? Just by a little bit.
I'm still not convinced the injury is anything at all. but we'll probably find out later.
Yeah, and Harris is a good play. Don't get me wrong. I feel like having massive ownership to Steelers feels bad.
Yeah.
All right, maybe pick and choose. Don't play both.
Right.
Yeah. Line side, let's talk some Swift and Hawkinson. Like I mentioned at the top, Jamal Williams probably going to miss this game. They played Jamar Jefferson quite a bit, but that was simply because that was just they were just getting absolutely roasted in that game. They played Jefferson a little bit late, which took away from Swift's usual garbage time. I think Swift is phenomenal play, and there's so many good running backs plays on this slate. I don't think he's going to be as high owned as he should be here.
Yeah, I think he's a guy to really consider, but at the same time, if the Steelers dust them, he's not going to play in the fourth quarter, which is what kind of stinks with him.
Hawkinson, any love? Target share has been great, over 28%, 3 straight. Steelers have been kind of quietly bad against tight ends lately. 448 and a touchdown to Seattle, 9 for 98 to the Browns, and then 8 for 115 to Bears tight ends over the last 3 games. So matchup and target share is pretty solid. He's a pretty decent price on DK too. 5,500.
Yeah, I probably like him better than Pitts.
Okay.
For tournaments, I think Pitts will be like 3 times his owned. And this should be the healthiest Hawkinson's. We saw him get 11 targets before the bye. Seemed like he was healthy. Gets the bye. I would imagine he's healthy. He's as healthy as he's going to be the last 6 weeks or so. So
he is not on their injury report, man. First time I've not seen him on the injury report since like week 4.
Right.
So yeah, he's a strong play too. Any thoughts on Swift and Hawk here, Scott, before we move on?
No, I think that's solid.
All right, Browns and the Patriots. Patriots are 2-point favorites. Over-under is 45, and we got some news about 30 minutes before we went live. Nick Chubb is not going to play, and this is kind of what we've seen all year, man. It's like, these guys, even if they're vaccinated, it's very, very tough for them to, get the 2 negative tests back-to-back. So Chubb's out. We're going to get Dearness Johnson week once again. Patriots side, they have issues in their backfield too, man. Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson haven't practiced all week. They're in the concussion protocol. I'd be shocked if they played. So it'll be Brandon Bolden and J.J. Taylor time, which is fun. All right, Dearness Johnson is like one of the biggest decisions we have to make on the slate. He's way too cheap on DK. He's essentially a free square on FanDuel down at like 5,300, something like that. Yeah. To Dearness Johnson or not to Dearness Johnson here, Scott?
For cash, obviously, do Dearness Johnson. For tournaments, I think he's going to be the highest owned player of the slate. And I think there's legitimately some merit to fading him, just in the sense that the Patriots are 2.5 point favorites. They're phenomenal against running backs on the ground. They're bottom 5 against running backs through the air. He has 70 career carries to 7 catches. That's actually over the past 2 seasons.
So keep in mind, Felton will be out as well.
Yeah, so that's right. Week 7, only 2 of his 24 opportunities came through the air, but Felton played, and now Felton's out too. You can make the argument that he's a little game script sensitive in a game with slightly bad game script, but it's just tough. It's just really tough. But if he's the highest owned player on the slate, maybe pivot to Mark Ingram. We'll have that debate when we get there, or play Landry or DPJ as leverage. But no, he's undoubtedly probably the best value of the slate.
More importantly than Chubb, more importantly than Felton, John Kelly's out, guys. John Kelly's out. Yards created go. John Kelly's out. You're right, Scott. There's always merit to fading the highest owned player, regardless of the spot, regardless of the value. There's always merit to that, but they have nothing else in their backfield.
New England sells out to stop the opposing offense in what it does best, and they probably just stack the box. I don't know though.
Well, that's what they did last week to the Panthers. They knew Sam Darnold wasn't going to beat them, so they just
right. But Baker doesn't have OBJ now, and so he's everyone's saying free OBJ. I'm saying free Baker. Baker's splits without OBJ are insane. He's legitimately a top 5 quarterback without him. Of course, I can't really make any sense of that, so I don't fully buy into it. But who knows?
I think one thing with Dearness that you can use to differentiate, especially in smaller field tournaments, is to pair him with Cleveland defense. I think Cleveland defense will have some ownership, but not a ton. And I think he definitely correlates really well to that, because if they get to the goal line, there's no one else. It's not like if they're up by 20, he's coming out of the game. He's the only running back there outside of Dusty Brian Hill, who has been there for like 3 days. So I think that's a really strong way to lower your sort of total projected ownership between those 2 players and get a positive correlation. But I do think, if Dearness is going to be 40+% owned in like the Millie Maker, it's hard to play him.
What do you think Ingram's going to be at?
I think if we confirm that Kamara is out, we probably get Ingram in like the 15 to 20 range. Dearness will be more popular than Ingram just because everyone watched him blow up on, that Island game.
Yeah.
I might prefer Ingram outright, which means the discrepancy in ownership is fairly exploitable.
I'm with you, Scott. We'll get there on Saints, but I'm with you. I don't think it's a huge. Do you have it like by a huge margin, or is it still pretty close?
I mean, it's like coin flip-ish.
Okay.
But it's going to be, Johnson 2 to 3 times as highly owned.
Yeah, right. He'll be more owned, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then what do you do with New England's backfield? Is it a Brandon Bolden week?
Sounds like it'll be Stevenson.
Nah, man. Stevenson, I saw something earlier that Stevenson didn't practice today. I mean, he's got a really short window, man.
Did they update it?
Yeah, there was a beat report, and I can't remember who came out with it early this morning.
Right.
It's going to play, and then he corrected himself like a couple hours ago.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes,
I guess it's Bolden.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, J.J. Taylor, they really don't seem like they trust him. So I think it's Bolden. And then I've also...
I hope he signed Jonas Gray this week.
Jonas Gray rolls off the sofa on a flight to New England, comes in, scores 5 touchdowns.
I've also, I guess, heard mentions that you could see Jonnu playing sort of some Joker-type stuff. So Jonnu becomes a little interesting as a play in that game that will have pretty high ownership on Johnson and Bolden. No one's going to play Jonnu, so if we see him get some of those, shovel pass type carry type work, it's kind of interesting.
Good call. All right, any other thoughts here? I mean, Landry busted last week. He's the target share has been there. He's been above 25% target share in 3 straight, but I mean, he's 5 catches and 40 yards at this point. He's still legit hurt. Any interest in like Landry or Myers here? I mean, Myers' target share has been good, but yeah.
Yeah, my notes on Jacoby Myers is that he's had a bottom 2 slot matchup in 2 consecutive weeks, and then even if you bring that back over the previous 4 weeks, every matchup was bottom 12 or fringe bottom 12. This is a perfectly neutral matchup. I mean, he also doesn't really have a ceiling for tournaments, and I don't really love him, even with the running backs out. The opposite side, I mean, like, the case for Landry was so strong last week. I thought even with the injury, since returning in week 7, he ranked 2nd in targets per route. In his last 6 full games without OBJ, he was averaging like 20 fantasy points per game. He gets the better matchup this week. It's New England's softer against the slot. They're top 10 out wide. But yeah, I mean, after what we saw last week, even with the 25% target share, he scored like 4 fantasy points. And then DPJ quietly has 75 receiving yards in 3 straight games and is averaging 19.5 fantasy points per game over that span, but he's also averaging like 5 targets per game. So just tough to trust.
Yeah.
But he makes sense as leverage off of Johnson, like Landry and DPJ both, at least a little bit.
Yeah. You're right, Kevin, from chat. Myers definitely is underpriced based on his role, but that ceiling is just so low. I mean, Scott's been all over this, and we've been talking about this on the stream all year. It's like he just has no touchdown upside. Like, he does not get end zone targets. Those all go to Hunter Henry. And the Patriots are pretty run heavy in the red zone too. So you're banking on, Myers being fine at 5,500 on FanDuel is,
he's worthless on FanDuel and Yahoo. He's just worthless in half PPR.
Yeah, he can get there and be a fine value for you for cash, but for tournaments, man, I would not.
He always ends up catching like 7 to 10% ownership, and for how little his touchdown value is, like that's too high for him on half PPR sites.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, if you want to play him in cash against your buddies in a 10-man league, fine, go for it. But do not play Jacoby in tournaments. All right, let's move it on. Jags and the Colts. Colts are 10.5-point favorites. Over under is 47.5. Still waiting on news on James Robinson. He got back to a limited practice with this heel ankle issue he's been dealing with yesterday. Urban said this morning that it's still kind of up in the air, so we'll see on that. Only other note in this game is T.Y. Hilton's back, so he's off of concussion protocol. Maybe a slight ding to Michael Pittman. But man, this game is all about Jonathan Taylor. He's way too cheap on DK. And Scott, I think you mentioned it earlier. The debate on DK this week is JT versus Harris. So where are you at on that?
Oh, I would go JT.
Okay.
Yeah, but I expect JT to be significantly more highly owned. This is something we were on a lot earlier than everyone else, but I mean, it's clear Taylor is now who we've always hoped he would be. He's a full-on bell cow when before he was inexplicably capped at something like 50% of the team snaps. Now he's 70, maybe 80%. He leads all running backs in fantasy points per game over his last, I don't know, what is it, 7 games now?
I think it's since week 6.
I think a little before that. I have it written up, but I'm doing a bad job of keeping track of my notes here. I'll pull it up in a little bit. But, so prior to injury last week, he was playing on 87% of the team snaps. He had 18 fantasy points in just 1.5 quarters, returned for 34 and 200 yards from scrimmage. 6th straight game with at least 21 DK fantasy points. The week before that, 74% snap share. That was the second most of his career. And it was a game Indy lost. His prior high in snap share in a game he lost was just 58%. The week before that, 69%. Second most of his career up to that point. And 80% through the first 3 quarters. That was a blowout. The week before that, 65%. That was the 4th most of his career up to that point. So it's climbing every single week, and it's really nearing that, depending on how you want to look at it, anywhere between 75% and 85%. And that was always the difference between Taylor being arguably the most valuable running back in fantasy as opposed to just being merely a low-end RB1. They have all of their starting offensive linemen back and healthy, and that's been the case since only week 8. And over that span, they are smashing every other offense in yards before contact per attempt. They're like 36% better than the next closest team. They're favored by 10.5 points. Jacksonville's quietly been pretty tough against the run, but I mean, I still think this is at worst a neutral to above average matchup.
Yep.
Yeah, since week 4, by the way, fantasy points per game, 25.7. Yeah. Leads all non-Henry running backs by 3.3.
Yeah, I will say on the Jags run defense, because I looked in this too. I mean, their numbers have been good, but they've also played the Dolphins, Seahawks, and Bills the last 3 weeks. I mean, those are 3 of the bottom 5 running teams as of late.
I mean, we have that stat. We have schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed to opposing running backs. They're top 4 over the last 5 weeks, and they're perfectly average across the full season.
I mean, they got murdered by Derrick Henry, so I don't know.
Right. And by Taylor last year.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Taylor's on the Derrick Henry talent spectrum, so I don't think this is a tough matchup at all. The other thing, Scott, to your point about the snap share, he's been running more routes than Nyheim Hines too. So not only is Hines and Marlon Mack's carry share gone down, we're finally seeing Taylor getting 18, 19, 20 routes per game. We probably won't get up to that this week, especially with them being huge favorites. But getting the extra 5, 7, 8 passing snaps has been huge here. Johnny, what are your thoughts on JT?
Yeah, I mean, I think he projects as the top projection running back on the week. I do think he'll be a little bit less owned than Najee Harris. Most of the projections you look at give Najee the edge on DraftKings in terms of targets, which I think is probably correct. And that's why I think Najee will be a little bit more owned on DraftKings. But I think they're pretty close. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor's odds of hitting 40 points is much better than Najee when you consider ceiling. But I do think, you guys mentioned, or Scott mentioned, or at least one of you mentioned that you don't love Pittman. I don't think Pittman's going to be all that popular, so I do think
I think he will be.
I don't think he's going to I think he'll be owned, but I don't think he's going to be super popular with Evans being as likely the massive chalk, and I think DK Metcalf is going to be massively owned too in a similar price range on DraftKings. But
I think that's a mistake if Metcalf is chalky. But I think Pittman's going to get ownership. Clear value, 17th in salary, but he ranks 10th among all slate eligible wide receivers in fantasy points per game, XFP per game. If you look at the matchup seems super soft, but I think Shaq Griffin's going to shadow, and he's been strong in his shadow games this year. T.Y. Hilton also may be returning. To me, this feels a lot like what we talked about with Evans versus Fournette and Harris versus Deontay, where it's just like depends on how you build your lineup. If you don't have Taylor, consider Pittman. Because really, Indy should be able to do whatever they want to do. Granted, we just said that about Josh Allen, but it's another defense that is susceptible both ways. Carson Wentz, by the way, playing out of his mind in recent weeks. He has like a 12-2 touchdown to interception ratio his last 5 games versus, Mahomes 6-6. But it's a lot like Pittsburgh, where Pittman and Taylor combined for a massive XFP share, 42%. Jacksonville ranks 3rd best in yards per carry allowed. They rank 3rd worst in passer rating allowed. So you can make the argument that in spite of the game script, this is somewhat of a pass funnel matchup. Really hasn't been. But I do think Indianapolis should be able to do whatever they want to do. And maybe that means, Pittman gets 2 touchdowns. That happened a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I actually don't love Pittman, but he makes sense on non-Taylor.
But how shocked would you be if Carson Wentz throws 4 touchdowns, Pittman gets 2, and Taylor ends up with, 140 rushing yards and no touchdowns? Right.
And that's the argument, which is, again, similar to what we said about Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh, where it's like, it's one or the other.
Right. I think Colts score points, so Colts players are I want Colts players.
Yeah, I'm 4th highest implied point total of the week. Yeah. About it.
Yeah. To the Pittman ownership conversation, he's 72 on FanDuel. Mike Evans is going to be 35-40%.
Well, he's not in play on FanDuel.
Okay. You don't think Pittman's in play?
You play him on DraftKings. He's wide receiver 17 versus wide receiver 10 in fantasy points per game.
Yeah. I still like Pittman on FanDuel for tournaments if he's going to be sub 10%. Jag side, man. Really, it's like, we're waiting on J-Rob, but I don't really.
I wanted to play J-Rob so badly, and because if you look at who he was prior to injury, he was fully back to being 2020 J-Rob.
Yeah.
Matchup's not great, but that like really never mattered for J-Rob last year. They had 1 win, and he just smashed every week.
Yeah, the thing is, he's just like, he's legitimately hurt.
Yeah.
There's a chance, it's a 50-50 split. The only guy I really like on Jag's side is Dan Arnold. Colts have been really bad in the secondary, and they've been kind of sneaky bad against tight ends. They've given up the 6th most fantasy points per target and the 3rd highest.
Most if schedule adjusted.
Yeah, so good spot for Arnold.
He's had 60 receiving yards and led the team in receiving yards in 3 of his last 4 games. Perfect matchup.
Yeah, he's Johnny, what do you think on FanDuel between Freiermuth and Arnold?
I think like Freiermuth, if I can't even pronounce this dude's name. I think
just call him Muth.
the Muth, the Muth is Luth.
But I think
I'm just gonna call him Patty F. He obviously has your better like touchdown projection because the Steelers would project to score more points.
Right.
But Arnold is, clearly the higher target share. So I think it's close on FanDuel. I do think Freiermuth will be more popular on FanDuel just because people have gotten sharp enough that they're just sort of touchdown hunting at tight end on FanDuel. And then on DraftKings, I think Dan Arnold ends up twice as owned as Freiermuth there. So I think it'll kind of be flipped site by site.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Arnold probably projects as the second highest, if not the highest guy on DK this week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's definitely the popular punt.
Yeah. I mean, he leads this team in targets since they lost Chark. Jamal Agnew's second, followed by Jones, and then Laviska Shenault's a dead distant fourth.
I think if Carolina loses this week and Jacksonville wins, he'd have twice as many wins as either team he played for, which I think is pretty cool. MVP. Dan Arnold.
It's not a hard bar to cross as a Jags fan, man. We have 2 wins in our last 2 years, so this is 3 wins now with the Bills. All right, Saints Titans. Titans are 3-point favorites. Over under is 44.5. I don't think we're going to see Alvin Kamara. He didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. Nick Underhill, who's one of the best beats out there for the Saints, has basically said he's doubtful at best. So that means we're going to get Mark Ingram in some sort of like full-time role. I'm still trying to like figure out exactly how it's going to shake out. They played, I saw a report they played they played Ty Montgomery a little bit at running back in practice this week. Dwayne Washington's still on the team. He's been special teams only, so I mean, he might mix in for like a snap or two, but really I think it's going to be Ingram and Montgomery. Titan side, Julio Jones, you're going to be shocked. He's back on the injury report. He's got a hamstring thing that he's been dealing with. Who cares at this point? Ryan Tannehill's sick, but he's going to play. Man, Kamara. This Ingram news. Let's get through it.
Let me frame this to Johnny. All right. Why were we all in on Latavius Murray last season? Why were we all in on Ty Montgomery in Week 17? And that's because historically, Sean Payton plays 2 running backs, and one of those running backs goes down. The other is deployed as a full-on bell cow and to great fantasy success. Ty Montgomery had a total of -4 rushing yards through the first 16 weeks of last season, with Kamara and Murray both out. He had 105 rushing yards and 18 carries. Alvin Kamara missed 2 other games last year. What happened? Latavius Murray handled 91% of the touches out of the backfield, 24 carries per game, 9 targets per game, 154 yards from scrimmage, 34.4 fantasy points per game. 2018, Mark Ingram out due to suspension. Kamara averaged 34 fantasy points per game, averaged only 19.8 after Ingram's return. Granted, all right, so are we expecting 19.8 to 34 fantasy points? Probably not. Ingram's 31, and Kamara's only averaging 19.8 per game himself, despite seeing easily the best usage of his career. He misses Drew Brees, the guy who targeted running backs at the highest rate in the league. Doesn't matter. Guy only needs 13.5 fantasy points to hit 3x value on DraftKings. And he almost hit that last week. Kamara played on 68% of the snaps. He had 10 carries, 5 targets. Matchup, isn't great, but, don't we just jam in Saints running backs when one of the 2 are hurt?
I want to. My concern is Trevor Simeon. We were playing Latavius with Teddy Bridgewater because we knew the targets were going to be there. I would, if Jameis was there, I would be all in on Mark Ingram. Wheels are going to fall off on the Trevor Simeon experiment.
Dude, they almost did last week. He just brought it back in the fourth quarter and kept him in that game.
Yeah.
He was almost benched basically last week.
And I think this is the week it falls off. But I think the price for Ingram is phenomenal for a guy who's going to get 90% of the touches. I do think Tymo will play a little bit since he does know the system, but he's been limited like all week. So I don't think he's going to play a whole lot. So, yeah, I think Ingram is a great play at price, but I'm worried about the Saints offense as a whole. I think I want to just like smash the Titans as at 2.5, and then Julio died again. So don't necessarily know what to do there. But the Titans defense has been good. I think this game might end up being really just sort of gross overall. But I do, the way I'm playing Ingram and Johnson is I'm probably kind of just monitoring ownership and seeing where they end up and tweaking things based on that. But if Ingram's going to be 10% and Dearness will be 40%, then I'll have more Ingram.
Yeah.
I'm not really worried about Trevor Simeon. I mean, he's not good, but bless his heart, he targeted running backs on 29% of his throws last week. Kamara and Ingram combined for 22 carries, 12 targets. I mean, that's
yeah. I mean,
best case scenario Najee.
It's largely a function that they just are completely rotating who the hell is going to get the ball, among the receivers. I mean, last week it was Deontay. Troutman got 7 targets again. I don't think we're going to see if Kamara's out, I don't think we're going to see Simeon throw into Ingram 30% of the time. I mean, that'd be a shock. And Taysom Hill, man, I mean, he got another carry inside the 10 last week, so he's a slight ding to Ingram's
that's fair
touchdown equity too. But I mean, I still think if we're playing the ownership game, if Ingram's going to be lower owned, then I want him over Dearness. That's really the big.
I will say I wouldn't be shocked if he targeted him just as much as Kamara.
Okay.
He got 5 targets on his own last week, and he only played 25 snaps.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. It's definitely fair. I mean, they have nothing else. I like Ingram more than Dearness, but yeah, I don't think it's by a huge margin. Man, Titans full on rotation at running back last week, like we expected. Adrian Peterson looked 37 years old, as expected. McNichols led him in snaps, but I mean, you're not playing any of those guys. And then really, I don't think Tannehill is really in play. It's do we want to play AJ Brown against Marshawn Lattimore, who's like one of the few corners I'm actually afraid of, and I don't really want to go there. But the target share has been unbelievable for him. I mean, he leads all wide receivers in target share since returning to the lineup in Week 5 at 36%. I mean, the volume has been phenomenal, and it'll be really good again this week if Julio's once again limited. Any interest in AJ Brown here, guys?
I mean, Johnny and I are two of the biggest cornerbacks matter truthers there are. So I don't think either of us are really on him. The one note I'll make is Tennessee has really gone out of their way to feature A.J. Brown in the slot. It's up to 40% now over the past few weeks. So he's only going to face – Lattimore doesn't move to the slot, so he's only going to face Lattimore 60% of the time. Which really could be and the Saints are very beatable in the slot, so he could come away with a few big scores. I'm not going to play him, but I definitely see that as a possibility where he's a slate buster, where 80% of his or 90% of his scores come from the slot. Johnny, AJ Brown, 40% slot rate in recent weeks, but Marshawn Lattimore.
I think we go back to A.J. Brown, coming off of a week where everyone played him in Showdown and he did nothing. So I think you're going to get him at some lower ownership, and with Julio gone, we probably get 12 targets again. Obviously, the matchup isn't great, the game isn't great, but he has one of the highest ceilings at wide receiver, and if you're going to get A.J. Brown at 5% ownership, that's when I want to play him. I mean, I wouldn't want to be all in on the guy, but I want to have more than the field.
Yeah. He's a little tougher to get to on DK, but I think with Adams at 7,900, he's going to get a ton of ownership. AJ Brown's definitely going to be sub 5. A little easier to get to on FanDuel. Yeah, Scott, I like your angle there on AJ Brown on the slot.
And the Saints are going to be missing CJ Gardner Johnson or whatever his name is.
Yeah, he's out. So yeah, AJ Brown in tournaments for sure. Yeah, CJ Gardner Johnson doesn't practice all week, so yeah, good call.
Yeah, that's their slot CB.
Yeah, good call. All right, let's move on. The Bills and the Jets. Bills are 13-point favorites. Over under is 48. A couple notes on the Bills side. Dawson Knox is back. Zach Moss is in concussion protocol. I haven't seen much more on him this morning. I don't think he's going to play. They're going to be without their linebacker, Tremaine Edmonds, too, which is kind of sneaky good for Michael Carter. We'll get there, though. On the Jets side, Corey Davis is back, and they're also expecting to get Tevin Coleman back, who hasn't played since week 5. He'll mix in for his 5 or 6 snaps, take a couple carries, whatever. Bills, man, after completely falling apart against Jacksonville, I mean, that second half they put together was abysmal. Just could not move the ball, a ton of pressure. Allen threw a couple picks, had a fumble, just comedy of errors there for the Bills. They are going to completely wreck the Jets here this week, right? I mean, we've seen Allen drop back to pass over 40 times in 3 straight games. You can do whatever you want against the Jets. You can run on them, you can throw against them, and especially with Zach Moss out, I think we're going to see, for as long as this game is competitive, I think we're going to see Josh Allen just come out and throw the hell out of the ball.
Yeah, except I think, we've reached a point where the community and the field is sharp enough that I think Allen will end up as one of the top 3 owned quarterbacks on the week. So I don't think we're going to get like he shit the bed last week ownership discount, which kind of stinks. But I think he projects, as the highest scoring quarterback on the week by a good margin. And I think, if you want to go all the way up, then Allen is your play. Though he's getting harder and harder every week to stack with. I mean, early in the week it was you just play him with Sanders, and Sanders would catch 3 balls for 100 yards and a touchdown. But now it's sort of like every guy gets 70 yards, and with Knox back, that'll be even more money. So that's what makes it hard for me is who to play Allen with.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Diggs' role has been fine, but it's not been the alpha, plug and play, obviously, at all this year. Sanders has been cutting into him. Beasley's banged up, but he's going to play again, and he's always good for his, usual 8 to 9. Scott, what are your thoughts here on Allen and these pass catchers?
I don't really have a great read here. Jacksonville destroyed him last week by increasing their rate in cover 2 and rolling the safeties. Cover 2 has historically always been Allen's Achilles heel, his kryptonite. He really struggles against them. Like Mahomes is struggling against cover 2 this year. I talked to one of my PFF buddies who is sure the Jets are going to go a similar route this week, in which case Cole Beasley would be the play. He's really good against cover 2, and he works in the area of the field which is more susceptible. I don't know. I really just don't have a great read here, and I don't expect to have too much exposure to Buffalo. I do like Michael Carter. I don't like Elijah Moore, and though I'm secretly hoping to reverse jinx him.
What? You don't like Elijah Moore?
Hate him. He's going to stink this week.
Yeah, I mean, last week just watching the game, I mean, the Bills had some massive pressure breakdowns. I think they're going to get Spencer Brown back. He's missed like a month or so. So that'll help. Jets also don't have, they're not getting after the quarterback at all. But Jags weren't either, and they got there last week. So, yeah, I'm with you guys. I think Allen is, he's definitely going to project as the best quarterback play on the slate. But there's, it's tough to stack him up. Jets side, I'm with you though, Scott. Elijah Moore slander aside, I like Michael Carter quite a bit, especially that Mike White's back. White was just, every other play targeting Michael Carter. And that's really about it. With Corey Davis back, I think we're going to see Eli Moore was up to second in routes last week, I believe. But with Corey Davis back, we'll probably see some sort of rotation with him and Cole and Crowder, and they have a bunch of guys they can roll out there. But Johnny, what are your thoughts here on Jets and Michael Carter specifically?
Yeah, I think my two favorite Jets would be Carter and probably Crowder. Just because I think Crowder will still be like Moore is the better player, obviously, but for whatever reason, Crowder is still the full-time player, and then Trey White should chase Corey Davis to just sort of make him a zero. So I think Carter and Crowder are the guys where, if the Jets show up and Mike White throws for 250 yards and a touchdown, it probably goes to one of those two guys with the best matchup and the most snaps. But I don't know. It's hard to get excited about the Jets, especially because I think people will likely use Carter the most in their Buffalo bringbacks, just because everyone knows at this point to treat him sort of as a wide receiver more so than a running back with Mike White out there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Jets just have such a low touchdown equity here. Bills have been dominant, both on the ground and through the air, in terms of stopping it. So yeah, it's tough. All right, let's close out these early games here. Falcons and Cowboys. Cowboys are 10-point favorites, obviously getting a ton of respect after flopping last week, as they should. They're back at home playing Atlanta. Over-under is 54.5. This is actually like the only semi-clean game we have here for injuries, which is great. Michael Gallup is back. He's going to play this week. Tyron Smith seems like he's going to be out. And, we've seen Dallas struggle in the past without Tyron Smith. But I think this is one spot where I'd be less concerned about their splits with and without Tyron Smith, just because the Falcons have been so bad at getting after the quarterback, getting pressure on the quarterback. So I do think this is a week where we don't have to be super concerned. And the Cowboys are like the only team in the NFL right now that have any semblance of offensive line depth. So I'm expecting a big bounce back in this spot for Dallas. And the other thing in this game is both these offenses play fast, especially the Cowboys. This is the second best game on the slate in adjusted pace and play. Before last week, Dallas was putting up 34 points per game, which would be easily a league high. And as a result, 5 of Dallas's 7 games with Dak has gone over 60 total points. So, I mean, this is, we're going to get to this Vikings-Chargers game, which I think has a pretty similar chance of a shootout. But, I mean, of all the games we've talked about, this game is the one that has a chance to really put up a big total. So, Johnny, I'll go to you first, man. How are you playing this game? How are you playing Dallas? What are your general thoughts here?
I think Zeke will probably be one of my highest owned tournament plays. I think Dak will be the highest owned quarterback on the slate. And Atlanta's this interesting team. And Zeke busted as like massive chalk, and now everyone has gone back into the whole you can't play Zeke because, he's only a 2-down back or whatever. But he actually plays like more than Tony Pollard when they're trailing. And Atlanta is a weird team where if you look at like fantasy points allowed to running backs, they haven't given up much, but they haven't faced like any talent. So if you look at like DVOA or schedule adjusted metrics, they're just as bad against the run as they are against the pass. So I think this is I don't think this is a good Atlanta team. I don't think they're hanging in there. Matt Ryan's playing as best as he can, but This is a really good Dallas team. I think they just wipe the floor with them, and I think that's the type of game script you want for Zeke, and he's going to be, because of the knee and because of how he did last week, he'll probably come in 12 to 15% owned or something. And if we didn't have all these other really good running back plays, he probably would be 20, 30% owned, just like he was last week. So he's a guy I think I'll focus on a lot. But I do think Dak is a good play too, especially with Gallup back and Cooper and CD healthier than last week.
Yeah, dude. I mean, even with the knee, even in a game that they got completely hammered. Zeke posted his highest share of the backfield touches last week. I mean, I don't know why they played Zeke so late in that game when it was completely done, but
yeah, but Pollard played his second highest snap share of the season.
Yeah, but he didn't.
And I just I can't get on board with Zeke when Pollard is seeing 8 to 12 touches per game. Yeah, okay, Pollard was only at 6, but like I said, the snap share. But yeah, highest touchdown upside player on the slate, or maybe second highest. But I really don't have a great read on this situation. This whole game, actually, I kind of been saving it for last. I mean, Cooper's banged up, Lamb is banged up, Gallup's back. One thing I do think is super interesting.
Kamara rolled out.
Who?
Kamara rolled out.
Yeah, Kamara's out.
I thought you were about to say Gallup.
No. Gallup has to play, or they would have to shut him down for the season.
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
He's at the end of his 21-day window.
Interesting. One thing I'll say is Lamb has beat Amari Cooper in XFP in every single game but one this year. Clearly the wide receiver one in the offense. He busted last week, but he was hurt. He still saw 10 targets, 223 air yards. But I mean, he's not a value. Like he's not cheap.
Yeah. Yeah, and AJ Terrell is, Falcons have one good corner. It's Terrell. He's played really well this year. With Gallup back, they're going to be able to do what they want to do, and that's rotate all three guys through. First couple of games of the year, they played Cooper basically moved all over. Lamb was a little more slot, and Gallup got a little more slot burn. He was at like 7% in 2020. He was up to I think 25 or 30% before he got hurt. So they're gonna rotate all three of these guys too. So then the question becomes, and I mean we've seen it this year when Dallas builds a lead. I mean they're gonna run the hell out of the ball, and I think that just lends itself to Zeke, like Johnny was saying.
I'm also not convinced that AJ Terrell is all that great. They've played a bunch of dusty wide receivers. Like Terry McLaurin dusted them for 6, 120 and 2.
That's fair.
Godwin and Evans dusted them, and then they've played like the Saints, the Panthers, the Dolphins, the Jets the last 4 weeks. So I don't know. I wouldn't be all that concerned about that's not somebody I would be concerned about with my DAC teams. I think for me, I'm more concerned about there being 4 guys. It's Schultz, it's Gallup, it's Lamb, it's Cooper, and like you mentioned with Cooper and Lamb dinged, this is probably one of those things where we see Dallas will probably play 5 or 6 wide receivers again this week, like they did last year, really annoyingly, where their top 3 will each get 70% of the snaps, and they'll mix in Cedric Wilson, Malik Turner, and whatever other dusty guys at the bottom of the roster.
Yeah, that's interesting last week. I mean, Dak was hurt, Zeke was hurt, and they gave Amari and Lamb that second half off basically because they were so far behind. I still don't get that. But all right, Falcons side, we're really just deciding between CPAT and Pitts. I mean, CPAT, man, he just has so many outs. Early in the year, we were like, oh, man, he's a massive touchdown regression candidate. And we've seen that, but now the role is so good, especially the type of targets he's seeing. I mean, he's getting legitimate burn at wide receiver. The price has finally corrected a little bit. He was in the 7K range on FanDuel for the last couple weeks. He's finally more expensive on FanDuel, but he's still way too cheap on DK. Scott, what are your thoughts here on CPAT, and then we'll talk some Pits.
I really don't have a great read. He's a maybe not great, but very good value. There's just a ton of running back plays this week, and it's hard to figure out who to refer between Pitts and Patterson. I will say Matt Ryan is quietly playing out of his mind. He's PFF's highest graded quarterback over the since week 4, I believe. Kyle Pitts obviously love the player. The thing that's been holding him back, since week 4, the thing that's been holding him back is he keeps going up against legitimate CB1s. He's getting the Calvin Ridley treatment. They're using him as a wide receiver, 83% of routes out wide or in the slot, and way more out wide than a Mike Gesicki, which is great for fantasy. Like that usage, that volume is unreal. He ranks first in air yards per game, over 100. That's like wide receiver 1 type volume. First in deep targets per game, second in XFP per game, third in fantasy points per game. That's since week 4. But he's just been super volatile. He's exceeded 23 fantasy points in 2 games, fell short of double digits in the other 3. He's also like great for explosive plays. He leads all tight ends and ranks top 10 among all receivers in gains of 15 and 35 plus yards. Dallas ranks bottom 3 in both stats, I believe, or at least just 35 plus. So that's the thing is like, okay, if he's going up against Dallas's cornerbacks, I'm not sure that's not a great matchup for him, because Jordan Lewis in the slot is going to face off against Gage, but Dallas's 2 starting outside cornerbacks both rank bottom 12 of 109 qualifying cornerbacks in yards allowed per snap and coverage, really giving up a lot of big plays. Granted, a lot of interceptions as well, but that seems like Kyle Pitts' wheelhouse.
Well, see, that's the thing. Trevon Diggs has a bunch of picks because he's so aggressive. He's so aggressive.
He's a gambling corner, right, Johnny?
Yeah. Yep. He's the Asante Samuel prototype.
Yeah.
Marcus Peters.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Which is great, but I mean, for fantasy, Trevon Diggs is not a guy we should be afraid of at all. I mean, the dude's given up the second most yards in his coverage.
And I mean, you'd think with all those interceptions and pick sixes, it would mean that the opposing quarterback would be a little bit more fearful in targeting him, but we're not seeing that at all.
No. Yeah, because he's not a lockdown cover guy. He's a very good athlete. He has great anticipation and great ball skills. But yeah, he's not a lockdown corner guy. And to your point, I mean, Kyle Pitts is, he's a unicorn. He gets open against everybody. Kyle Pitts has 30 targets of 10 or more air yards, and he started slow, and he's already had his bye. And those 30 targets of 10 or more air yards easily leads the position over Kelsey and Andrews and Waller and Gesicki. Pitts is a really strong play, but I think he's going to end up being pretty popular, especially on DraftKings. He's harder to get to on FanDuel. Johnny, you were saying you like Hawk more than Pitts this week?
Yeah, I think at ownership.
Okay, that's an ownership play.
Yeah, I think Hawk will be, because I think they project pretty similar, and I think Hawk is a guy that I always want to play him when I think he's healthy and the field hasn't really gotten back to where he is. I think if they didn't have the bye, I think Hawk would have been really popular this week. But I think people sort of forgot that he had a huge game against the Eagles, and then Diggs for sure is a guy who gambles, but I still don't think it's not a good matchup per se, but it's not like he's getting shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore or something. But I would say it's a little bit of a ding, especially if he's going to come in as like the second highest owned tight end or something. Because we've seen Matt Ryan the last 2 weeks is just more willing to spread it out. There were those 2 games where he gave 9 and 10 targets to Kyle Pitts, and they were starting to come around. And then the last 3 weeks, he's really, really played really well and sort of been spreading the ball out a lot more. We've seen, CPAT has still been consistent, but he hasn't been having those 40-point games because he's getting a little bit less of that, fed, and then same with Pitts. So that's the concern, is that it's a bit more spread out offense, and like a lot of these guys are nobodies. Like there's really nobody other than CPAT and Pitts that I want to play in Atlanta. Yeah. But I wouldn't be shocked if Russell Gage has 2 touchdowns this week. But I'm not going to play him.
Yeah, Gage was on about 2/3 of the routes, I believe, if I remember correctly, in his first game back. Last week he was basically full-time again. That's why he came through with think he had 7 catches. 8 targets, 7 catches. So week 8 and week 7, week 8, Gage was limited. Finally got him back in like a full-time role. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Gage could be sneaky, but man, I mean, it's really like pulling names out of a hat between their three receivers at this point.
Yeah, I mean, none of these guys are full-time players, you know? I mean, Pitts is playing, 80% of the snaps. CPAT's playing 50%.
One thing that Pitts has in his favor is, even though it's been up and down, to Scott's point about the matchups and to what I was saying, he's kind of getting more highly variable targets because he's getting targeted so far downfield. Is like his role has been great. Ridley, in the 3 games without Ridley, Pitts' target share has been 22, 22, and 24%. So it's been consistent. And Falcons, they're huge dogs. I mean, they're going to have to throw a ton in this game.
Yeah, and I would say of the Falcons, Pitts and CPAT are the only 2 that can really have that 70-yard touchdown that really opens up the game. And when you're doing your game stacks, Dak and 2 wide receivers, those are the 2 guys you want on the other side. Russell Gage getting 11 catches for 80 yards doesn't hit this total.
Right. Yep. All right. Let's move on here to the afternoon games. We got 4 of them this week. Vikings and Chargers, first one we're going to talk through here. Chargers are 3-point favorites. Over under is 53. Chargers are pretty clean on the injury report. Vikings have a couple injury notes on their defensive side. Rashad Breeland is questionable. I guess they play Cameron Dantzler in Breeland's spot if he misses. Breeland's been really bad this year. And Anthony Barr is out. He came back. I think he's been playing for the last month or so, but he's not going to play in this game. So Vikings defense, man, they've kind of fallen apart here as of late. Not going to get Michael Pierce back this week either. Chargers had that one blip in the radar in week 6 against the Ravens, but I mean, they've put up 30, 28, 47, 24, and 27 points in 5 of their last 6 games. We know what they want to do. They come out and throw the ball. And especially with this Vikings defense that's dealing with a ton of injuries and was just, diced up for 325 and 2 touchdowns by Cooper Rush. And Lamar got him for 266 and 3 scores last week. Man, I mean, I think this is, another really good spot for Herbert. And he was, the guy last week who was lower owned in a lot of the single entry, smaller field stuff that I play on FanDuel. And he ended up being, pretty much the nuts on a really low scoring week. I think this is a really good spot here. The big question that I have, and I really have no answer for it, is which version of the Vikings offense shows up. I mean, they've put up 30 or more on the board 4 times this year, and they've also been held under 20 points in, a few of their last games against the Browns, Lions, and Cowboys in games that they should have been a lot better. I really don't have a strong opinion either way of what Vikings we're going to get this week, but that's really the key to this game, for its shooting out.
So I do have a strong opinion. I don't have one for Chargers side, but I think Vikings side is fairly easy, and that's that the Chargers are far and away the league's top run funnel defense. Opposing offenses are running on them 8.1% more than their expectation. That's twice as much as the next closest defense. They rank worse in yards per carry allowed, top 10 in passer rating, second worst in rushing fantasy points per game allowed, second best in passing fantasy points per game allowed. So, I mean, this just really shapes up to be a Dalvin Cook game. He's right in that top tier of, Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, Zeke, Christian McCaffrey. I might like him even more than Zeke, to be honest. But the concern is that they're not actually favored. But everything about the matchup says that doesn't matter when you face Los Angeles. Teams are going to run the ball on them. And he's only averaging 1.8 catches per game over his last 5. That's down from 3.5 over the past 3 seasons. He's a great play. And how you target Los Angeles through the air. You have the number 1 slot cornerback in maybe the history of football. You're not going to do that.
Asante Samuel's back, by the way.
I was going to say, are both starting outside cornerbacks back, or just
Samuel?
Just Samuel. The replacement to the other guy got hurt too. I think he tore his ACL, so they might be down to their 4th string guy.
So that's a liability because if both were back, I was going to say the only way you would do it is with the tight end, or typically just they've given up 33.5% of their total receiving production to tight ends. That leagues all defenses. So tight end funnel, run funnel matchup would be Conklin, Dalvin. Obviously Dalvin well above Conklin, but and then Charger side, I don't have great takes there. I was hoping to learn something from you guys.
It's Mike Williams week.
Why?
Is it?
You just dust the Vikings deep. Hasn't every team in the league done that?
See, I had the same thought, and then I looked into this. Since Mike Williams has gotten hurt, he has 4 targets total. 4 total targets of 15 or more air yards in his last 3 games. He was averaging basically 4 deep targets a game when he was healthy. So then the question
now too.
Vikings, by the way, are giving up the 10th most yards per game to opposing wide receivers on deep passes. I mean, but that's only like 5 yards more than the league average rate. So that doesn't really mean anything to me.
My concern is that Mike Williams is like legit hurt still, and he's just not on the injury report, but he's just playing through.
See, I thought he looked good last week, and it was just a brutal matchup against Darius Slay.
So there's been, and I know Rich Reeves was talking about this a little bit this week, in that it's kind of been a little bit predictable that he busted the last few weeks. Like the Ravens, he was limited, obviously, and then the Patriots weren't going to let the Chargers beat them deep. The Eagles, no one has beat the Eagles deep. And now he gets a Vikings team that you can beat them deep. And this is one of those where a lot of people are talking about Mike Williams and that this is a good spot, but none of the ownership projections have really moved. So as much as everyone's talking about him, I'm not sure he's actually going to catch any ownership. So I think this is kind of like the last spot for me. Like I wasn't in on Mike Williams last week. It was pretty easy to play Keenan, but I'm going to play Mike Williams this week, and if he doesn't do it here, then maybe he is just dust again.
Yeah. That's a great point, especially on the Eagles side. I mean, they just give up. They're completely fine just getting shredded for like 8 yards a pop, which is stupid. But yeah, it's a good point on the Eagles side. But I mean, the good thing about this game is it's super condensed. Scott, you like Dalvin Cook a little bit more than I do. I guess my concern is, they had a similar matchup against the Lions, and Madison got there obviously for us because Dalvin was out in that game. But they only put up 19 points in the Lions. They've just been so fucking hard to predict this year.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Mike Williams, Johnny, because I think that's a good call. Flopped last week against Slay. Flopped the week before that against J.C. Jackson. Keenan Allen had the far better matchup in both spots. Ravens, he flopped, but he only played 36% of the snaps.
And he should have had a touchdown, but he came up like limp on his or whatever.
Smashed in a great matchup against the Browns. Sucked against the Raiders, but guess what? That was Casey Hayward's shadow coverage, maybe the worst possible matchup. And then he smashed in his other 3 games. So every down game made total sense in hindsight, and pre-hindsight, and then only otherwise smashed.
On that note, so I was talking to A Raven the other day. I think Brandon Staley might be sharp enough that we can point to matchups that he's targeting. So we talked about on the pod last week that there was going to be a Chargers tight end was going to smash. I just didn't know who it was going to be, right? Well, they all 3 did. All 3 Chargers tight ends were top 12 tight ends on the week. And the Eagles have just been getting smashed by tight ends all season. And then the Chargers come out and they just throw the balls to the tight end. So I think we can sort of pinpoint that Staley knows where teams are weak and he's going to target that stuff. So at least that's what I'm convincing myself of. And then if Mike Williams is hurt, then, I'm just going to dust off on my Mike Williams shares.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not on the injury report, but yeah, the lack of, deep targets is a concern. But yeah, maybe to your point, it's all just matchup based stuff. That's all I got on this game. You guys good to move on?
Why isn't Austin Eckler top tier?
I think he's another guy that is interesting this week. But I just have a hard time playing him over McCaffrey, Harris, and Taylor, and probably over Cook.
Yeah.
Yeah, running back is loaded this week. Absolutely loaded. All right, let's move it on. Panthers and the Cardinals. Cardinals are getting 10.5 points at home over the PJ Walker-led Panthers. Obviously, the big thing we're going to be tracking this weekend is Kyler Murray. He got back in some sort of limited practice today. Cliff Kingsbury came out and said he's still a game-time call. He's got to see how he feels Saturday and Sunday. At this point, man, I mean, you're playing the Panthers. You're at home. I don't know. Colt McCoy looked fine last week. We'll see. DeAndre Hopkins is going to miss another game here. Rondale Moore is in concussion protocol, and they're going to get AJ Green back. So the Cardinals are a bit of a mess. Panthers side is kind of gotten conflicting reports whether or not Cam's going to be activated this week. I mean, regardless, he's not going to start. But the question is if he backs up Walker here. Cardinals side, man, is let's just talk through this game like Kyler's going to miss. Man, I mean, Johnny, do we play James Conner at this elevated price? He's up to $7K on FanDuel. He's just a little bit more on FanDuel than DK.
If Kyler is playing, then James Conner is probably the best play on the slate. It's so weird to me that people just suddenly Sunday, Monday, everyone's like, James Conner, such a smash. And then we get fucking Dearness Johnson and everyone's like, oh, I can't play James Conner anymore.
Yeah.
He's are they really going to play? I mean, Eno Benjamin played 15 snaps or whatever when they were up by 100.
Yeah. So 8 of Benjamin's 9 carries came in that second half. And they were up by, to your point, they were up by 15, 17 at that point. Right.
So James Conner assumed the James Conner and the Chase Edmonds role. And we've talked all season, if there was just one of these two guys, they would be such a smash. And now here it is. And he's going to be the 7th, 8th highest owned running back, and he should be the highest owned running back on the slate. They're the best offense in the NFL behind the Bucs, and it's if you could guarantee you were going to get the Bucs running back for 90% of the snaps, you'd be all in on him too. Yeah. So I'm just going to jam Conner in probably pretty much everywhere if Kyler's playing, and I'll still have a lot of him if it's Colt McCoy, because I think if Colt McCoy's the quarterback, Conner will end up 10% owned or something, which just seems ridiculous.
Well, the good thing with Colt is, I mean, he's going to, at this point, he's not going to be able to push the ball down the field, and he's going to dump off quite a bit, and Rondale Moore's out, and that's their main screen dump off short area guy. So I'm with you. I don't really think it matters all that much for Conner's projection. I mean, you can obviously the touchdown equity is way higher with Kyler, but role-wise, I don't really think it changes at all, between McCoy and Murray here. Scott, you got any James Conner takes?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Cliff Kingsbury did talk up Eno Benjamin a little bit, but I mean, Conner played on 97% of the snaps in the first half.
Eno stinks. He's a scat bat who's just he stinks. He's not
I think with Kyler out, that could be a good thing. I'd expect them to lean even heavier on the run. Also, no goal line vulture threat there. And then Johnny nailed it with Arizona's 6th in team running back fantasy points scored, and now Conner's locked into 75 to 95% of the work. He is a ridiculous touchdown regression candidate, one of the biggest I've ever seen. Just obscene, but he's no doubt a phenomenal play.
Yeah, well, the regression's not going to come, my man, because now Chase Edmonds is going to be out for quite some time with this ankle thing. So, yeah. Panthers, man, really it's just McCaffrey. I guess you can play DJ Moore, but let's talk McCaffrey. Obviously got back last week, 49% of the snaps. Matt Rule said he's going to be limited last week, and he was. But the thing is, he's still got 19 opportunities on those 49% of the snaps. We're going to see how, quarterback proof McCaffrey really is this week with PJ Walker in there. But, obviously, Panthers are huge dogs. Passing down volume is going to be there. And I think we're going to see McCaffrey moving forward. I don't think we're ever going to see McCaffrey back at like 90% of the snaps like he was in his, golden days. But, even 70%, 75% snap share McCaffrey is still worth, 25, 26 PPR points per game as opposed to the 29, 30, 31 he was worth beforehand. But yeah, McCaffrey's still a nice discount on DK, man. And, even with PJ Walker in there, they're huge dogs. This is a really nice spot. Johnny, what kind of ownership do you think McCaffrey's going to get here?
I don't think he's going to be all that owned, but I do think we see him get back into the 80-90% of the snap range.
Really? Okay.
So the Panthers came out and signed Cam Newton to a legitimate contract, and then Matt Rule
will be
came
your
out.
starter.
Yeah, oh yeah, he will next week, I think. And then Matt Rule came out and he was saying you play to win or whatever, and it was this long, drawn out, essentially saying they're going to go to try and be competitive this season, and that makes me think that McCaffrey probably steps back into the big role that he used to have, especially seeing him get 20 touches last week. My concern is just that I don't think the Panthers are very good, so I don't know what his touchdown upside is. In the past, you would project McCaffrey for 1.2 touchdowns or whatever in reasonable matchups, but I don't know about that. But I think the touches are going to be there. I think he'll be back to a bell cows because I think Matt Rule's an idiot, and I think he'll be gone soon. But I think he's playing to win for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, man, this is the second time we've seen McCaffrey come back from a major injury, and you would think they would have learned their lesson and not play him every freaking snap. But maybe you're right. Yeah, maybe you're right. Scott, you got a McCaffrey take here?
Yeah, I mean, 50% of the snaps, 18 touches. It's only going to go up from here, and McCaffrey only needs to be 70% historically of who he's been to be the best running back play of the slate. He's $1,500 cheaper than his week 3 salary on both sites. Might not ever be this cheap again. You know where I stand on McCaffrey, the most valuable player in fantasy by a landslide when he's healthy. Yeah, I want to play him.
My concern too is PJ Walker as a mobile quarterback targeting running backs. That's what I've been trying to figure out in my head. If I can convince myself that McCaffrey can get that 8+ type target game, then I would be all in. But I'm still not quite there. I want to be all in on him.
Right.
I think there's holes you can poke, but I don't think PJ Walker's mobility is one of them. And I mean, McCaffrey smash with Cam Newton, I don't know. I just don't see it.
Yeah, well, Cam changed his game. Cam was always, he threw freaking bullets, no matter if it was 5 yards or 50 yards. He changed up his game to cater to McCaffrey. Just looking through it, so PJ Walker made that one start against the Lions last year, and they completely killed the Lions. They won 20-0. So maybe that's a little bit of it, but PJ only ran 5 times. And I think a few of those were kneel downs at the end of the game here. So
yeah, but he only threw twice to Mike Davis, who was getting 8 targets a game.
True.
Eddie.
True, and he threw it 34 times. So yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point. DJ Moore got 11 targets in that game, 7 for 127. Again, it's the Lions. Cardinals are way, way tougher. But any interest in DJ Moore here? I mean, it's an upgrade at this point, going from Darnold to Walker. I will take the crickets as a no.
There's a backup connection with Terrace Marshall and Tommy Tremble, but it's almost too thin to mention.
It is too thin. If DJ Moore is too thin, then Terrace
Right.
Marshall and Tommy Trevor
Right.
are way too thin. Where are we at here? Let's move it on. We got to keep it going here. We got about 30 minutes. Eagles, Broncos. Broncos are 2.5-point favorites. Over under is 45.5. Really, the only injury notes I have in this game, Albert O, coming off chalk week, is hurt. He's got a knee injury. Got in some work on Thursday. Excuse me. We'll see what he does today. Broncos injury report probably won't come out till later this afternoon. If he doesn't go, Fant is a phenomenal play against the Eagles. Tim Patrick's banged up. I think he's going to play. That's all I really got. Broncos, man. We know what the running back room is like. It's going to be a dead split. Gordon starts, then Javonte comes in, gets a series, then they just rotate back and forth the rest of the game. They don't really have a rhyme or reason for how they play their guys. It's just who's on the field. So really can't go there. I like Jerry Jeudy quite a bit this week. Eagles have been, to your point earlier about Mike Williams, Johnny, Eagles have just been completely content just to get shredded, for 7-8 yards a pop. Judy's been, he's been mostly slot this season in the games that he's played. They did move him around a little bit more last week. He would have lost his mind if Dallas had shown up in that game. But I like Jeudy here, and honestly, that's really about it. Any thoughts here on this game, Scott, beyond maybe Jeudy and Fant if we don't get Alberto?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. I mean, Eagles backfield's full rotation. Goddard's in a bad matchup.
Hurts is in a bad matchup.
So the Broncos will be without Shermer because of COVID. So I think we probably see them run the ball even more than normal. And
yeah.
Have
they said? I saw something from Fangio. Has there been any report about who's going to call plays? Fangio said he's not.
He knows who it will be, but he's not telling.
Oh.
No.
Oh. Gotta keep him off guard, baby.
Yep.
So stupid. Okay. That's really all I got, man. I think Judy's in play, and that's kind of about it.
Yep. I'm done with Jalen Hurts. I'm tired of clicking his name, getting 7 rushing touchdowns from Jordan Howard.
Jordan Howard's on the practice squad all year, and now he's their lead runner. I also appreciate how it took the Eagles and Nick Sirianni half the season to figure out that they needed to run the ball to help out Hurts, and they did it without Miles Sanders. So stupid, man. So just unbelievably dumb.
Miles Sanders would be smashing right now if he was alive.
Yes, he would be. Yeah, they've gone I put this note in Stat Pack this week, but the Eagles have gone 77% run heavy. Or sorry, 73% run heavy on early downs in the last 2 games. Now, granted, some of that is, they're playing the Lions and Chargers, and the Chargers have been, we've been talking about this on the stream all year, but the Chargers are terrible against the run. But man, they've it only took 2 months, but they finally figured out they need to run the ball. Yeah, that's really all I got here. All right, let's keep it moving. Close out this stream with Seahawks and the Packers. Packers are still going to be waiting to get David Bakhtiari back. He's doubtful here. It looks like he might have had a chance last week and this week, but he's coming off the ACL. They're just playing it really, really safe with him. Packers are obviously in a really good position with the NFC, and they probably don't want to rush him back. So no Bakhtiari this week.
I don't even know if they'll have Rodgers or not. They think.
Yeah. I think he's going to play. He hasn't been. That's the thing, though, and that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. Is like he hasn't practiced in 2 weeks, and it's Aaron Rodgers. He's been in with LaFleur for however many years now. He doesn't need to practice to play well, but I think he needs to practice to have this game hit a ceiling here. I mean, the over/under is 49.5. Both of these offenses are among the slowest and most lethargic in the league. Packers are dead last in pace. Seahawks are dead last in plays per game. And this isn't something that's like a Russell Wilson split. The Seahawks played slow as shit with Wilson. in their their first 4 games too. So I mean, there are a lot of like little concerns that are adding up to a big concern for this game.
Yeah, I think for Rodgers, it's like if he's symptomatic, he can't play, but he was still symptomatic as of like this week. So I don't know, but I think he'll probably play. I think the issues in terms of like cardio, like I don't know how much he's really done the last 10 days. I know when Zeke had COVID, he had talked about how he felt like so winded the first couple weeks back or whatever, and other guys have talked about that too. So
it's going to be cold in Seattle this weekend too.
Yeah, I think this might just be a pretty gross game. I think people are going to play Metcalf, they're going to play Lockett, they're going to play the Russ stacks because everyone wants to get back to the Russ double stacks. I do think Lockett seems healthy. And it like, if there was no issues with Rodgers, if Russ was healthy, etc., this would be a game I'd be excited about, but I'm just not as excited about it. And the whole A.J. Dillon stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this total has trended down all week, too. It opened at 50, I believe, and then on Wednesday it got down to like 49.5. It's now down to 48.5. So I think everybody's kind of seeing the same things we're talking about here. Yeah, man, I'm with you. I would love to play this game. It's just, man, it's tough. Scott, you have any other opinions or thoughts here? Any one-off plays you like?
Yeah, I like Lockett a lot.
Sorry, say that again? You like Lockett?
Yeah.
Okay.
He saw 13 targets on just 24 routes in week 8. He caught 12 of 13 for 142. And I think this is...
That was when Geno Smith, remember he existed. He forgot he existed.
Well, I think what it was is this is just a sign that Lockett's finally back to full health.
Sure.
And this is something I was on immediately. He suffered an injury in week 3. I warned exactly of this in all my content, is that...
Oh.
And he's gone.
That router costs as much as his couch.
I'm back, bitches.
Oh, my God.
What up?
Chris is going to murder you.
I don't know what that was, but so he appeared to have suffered a serious injury. He has a long history of playing through injury, not even being on the injury report, but not playing particularly well while injured. You can read those older articles to see the evidence backing that up. He should be even healthier this week following the bye, as should Russell Wilson. He's just the wide receiver 15. Pre-injury plus his last game, 28.0 fantasy points per game. And also the Packers are cover 4 heavy, cover 6 heavy. Lockett smashes Metcalf historically against both cover 4 and cover 6. So it's a West play as well. And I like it. Low ownership, pretty sure.
Yeah.
Don't play both of the Seattle wide receivers unless you're playing Russell Wilson. Just make sure you don't have both of them in your lineup.
Yeah. You would think, man, there would be games where Metcalf and Lockett both lose their mind, but it's really like one or the other. Like,
yeah,
there's been like one game out of the last like 25 they played together where they've both gotten there for tournaments. Just doesn't
it was like what, week like 2 or 3 of the whole let Russ cook period, and then it all just went to shit.
Yeah, man. Pete Carroll's got to get his game plan in. He's got to do it. Seahawks they were perfectly balanced, like 53% pass, 47% run on early downs when Wilson played in weeks 1 through 4, and that was despite Wilson averaging like 10 yards per attempt on those early down throws. They're not going to do what we want them to do. That's really all I got, man. Devontae Adams, Rodgers is back. He's 7,900 on DK. He's probably going to end up being pretty popular, right, Johnny? We got to talk some Adams here.
Yeah, I think Adams will be pretty popular, especially with all the punt running backs.
Right.
But I do think there's risk involved with the whole Rodgers thing. But I do think if Rodgers wants to prove a point that him eating clay or whatever doesn't affect his his ability to play quarterback, I could totally see him checking into throws at the goal line a little more than we see with him in most weeks. So definitely like Adams, but 30% owned Adams on the exact same structure that everyone else is going to have. I think there's merit to switching that up a little bit. Guys like Jefferson and McLaurin have similar ceilings, and they'll be a lot lower owned. But obviously, Adams is the highest projected play.
Yeah, there is. So he's a little cheap, like based on historical pricing for Adams, and it's really interesting. I believe he's the only wide receiver ranking top 8 in fantasy points per game who is actually on the main slate and is active this week. So like far and away, your top upside play at wide receiver.
Yeah, it just sucks because he's going to be like 30% owned.
Yeah. He's going to be really chalk on DK. FanDuel maybe a little bit less so, but yeah.
Yeah, he's underpriced on DraftKings. He should be like 8,800.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And to your point, I mean, he's easy to get to because everybody's going to have at least one of those super cheap backs. So, guys, this has been great. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the stream. If you could, please go down, hit the like button, subscribe to our page if you haven't already. That helps us out a lot. We'd really appreciate it. This will probably be the last time we do a free show for cashing points, but we're just, like I said, we're testing out a couple things, testing out a new platform. So want to see how the bells and whistles go. But yeah, man, this has been great for Johnny, for Scott, and for Chris behind the glass who's put all this together. I'm Graham. Guys, this is let's make some money this week, week 10. Let's get it done, and we will see you guys next week.